3 spine-chilling true Carnival horrors exposed, the cursed secrets hidden in the Funhouse. The Carnival was in full swing, colorful lights flashing like a horror show, laughter spiraling into the night air. Clara's heart raced, but not with joy. She felt the weight of countless whispers about the Funhouse, the stories buried deep like landmines ready to detonate. "Stay away from the Funhouse," they said. "Families vanish there." A shiver slid down her spine. The towering Funhouse was a black behemoth, mirrors cracked and broken, reflections warped into grinning demons. It was no longer the whimsical escape she once cherished, it had transformed into a portal of dread. Tommy's laughter pierced through her thoughts as he dashed into the crowd, his small frame a blur of energy. Beside him, Lily trudged along, her face a mask of boredom and reluctance. Simple joy should have danced in Clara's heart at seeing them, but instead, it throbbed with a sense of foreboding. The Carnival, once a cradle of childhood delight, now seemed a twisted specter, the bright lights beckoning like sirens to a ship lost at sea. "Come on, Mom." Tommy rallied, pulling her toward the land of Funhouse dreams and nightmares. Clara hesitated, fingers gripping the cool, splintered edge of the entrance. A whisper in her ear hinted at the darkness lurking within. The laughter shifted, no longer sweet, now tainted, echoing with something sinister. Something deep stilled in her stomach. It was just her imagination, she reminded herself. Just the flicker of shadows in an overactive mind. Stepping inside, the atmosphere thickened. The air vibrated with electric tension. Mirrors danced, reflecting her unease in convulsing patterns. Tommy laughed again, voice bouncing off the walls. But then, he stopped. Clara's heart plummeting as she squinted through the dimness and saw him animated, talking to a figure she couldn't identify, a blur against the warped glass. The figure's grin stretched unnaturally wide. It felt eerily familiar to Clara, a faint tickle at the edges of recollection. Why did it remind her of childhood fears? "Tommy!" She gasped, voice barely above a whisper, trapped in the swirling darkness surrounding her. A chill crept up her spine as memories collided, the horror stories, the terrible tales of children swept away, lost to the Funhouse's ravenous depths. "Stay close!" She called out, though the unease gripped her tighter than ever. Suddenly, her pulse quickened. In her peripheral view, a form answered Tommy's cheerful demeanor with mirthless laughter. It was Mr. Grayson, the Carnival owner, a man whose eyes held secrets darker than midnight. A sinister shine curled at his lips as he met Clara's gaze, making her stomach churn. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The laughter morphed, twisting into something malevolent, echoing her fears. Tommy's giggles rang out, buoyant yet alarmingly reckless as he charged deeper into the Funhouse. Clara lunged, but the distorted figure grinned wider, beckoning Tommy further into darkness. Her lungs tightened, dread gripped her heart like a vice. "Tommy!" Panic frayed her breath as she ran. The sound of Mr. Grayson's laughter crescendoed around her, filling her ears with a warning. Every step deeper felt like she was plunging into her own nightmares. It was as if the Funhouse had come alive, walls bending around her, suffocating thoughts of escape. Clara's eyes darted, searching through the hall of cracked mirrors for her son. The atmosphere pulsed, each reflection holding a sliver of horror, clowns with sickening grins and shadows. Shifting, darkness breathing heavy all around her. In a flash, she caught sight of Tommy's silhouette, but he was no longer alone. Grayson loomed, smiling like the monster he was. Clara's blood ran cold, heart thundering in her chest as she tried to scream, but all she could do was run. Every heartbeat drummed the rhythm of impending doom, shadows closing in as mirthful laughter mingled with something she wished she'd never encountered. Would she reach him in time? Could she pull him back before the Carnival's fingers gripped tight? As the mirrors echoed with screams of lost souls, her last thought whispered, was Tommy already trapped? Would she too be swallowed whole by the curse buried within the brightly lit facade of joy? The shadows thickened as Clara barreled deeper into the maze. Each step echoed like a drumbeat of dread. The mirrored reflections twisted her image, a woman on the brink of despair, overshadowed by an impending nightmare. Sweat trickled down her back, and her breath turned shallow. "Tommy," she yelled, desperation clawing at her throat. Twisting, she pressed forward, heart racing. The cacophony of joy that once filled the carnival blurred into a haunting symphony of laughter and crying. Somewhere, her son giggled, but beneath the sound lay a treacherous edge. A broken echo that dragged her back to stories she'd fought to forget. Tales of children who roamed in search of fun, never to return. She caught glimpses of Tommy's bright shirt in the distance, darting through the funhouse as if taunted by a phantom. A chill swept through Clara, a whisper of the horror lurking just beyond the flickering lights. The mirrors lined the walls like sentinels, each surface reflecting not only images but a sense of dread. Clara pressed on, every reflection mocked her, belittling her fears. "Stay close." The words barely slipped from her mouth as she stumbled into a warped corridor. Here, the laughter grew sharper, infused with something sinister, a melody of malice that seeped into her bones. Instinct screamed for her to turn back, to flee this place that seemed alive with malevolence. But Tommy. Her heart pulsed with the thought of him. There. Just ahead. A blur of color slipped past a shattered mirror. A wild burst of adrenaline shot through her veins as she sprinted. She couldn't lose him. Not here. Not ever. As she rounded a corner, her foot caught a broken tile, and she stumbled, barely catching herself against the wall. The laughter stilled, and silence flooded her ears. A sickening feeling settled in the pit of her stomach. For a moment, it felt like the entire funhouse held its breath, waiting. "Tommy." She called again, her voice hoarse. The silence hung heavy, as if the funhouse itself was swallowing her words. What was happening here? Fear closed in around her like a tightening noose. Memories tugged at her, a childhood trauma echoing through the years. She remembered the stories about Mr. Grayson. They said he could trap you in the mirrors, steal your spirit. A shiver ran down her spine, every horror tale spoken in hushed whispers echoing through her mind. Suddenly, the world shimmered, and a face appeared in the glass, a haunting visage. It was Tommy, but his eyes were vacant, his smile twisted. "Mom." He called, voice lilting, as if he were drifting too far away, into the depths of something terrible. "No. Tommy." She slapped her palms against the glass, heart racing. The cool surface felt alive, thrumming as she pressed harder, desperation clawing at her. But his form shimmered, flickering like a faulty light. A murmur of laughter burst forth from behind her, sending cold dread racing back through her denmark. Grayson, looming again, flanked by contorted shadows, his smile wicked. "You really shouldn't have come here," he taunted, voice smooth like honey masked in poison. The shadows shifted around him, swirling in grotesque forms, creeping closer to Clara. All at once, the mirrors trapped her in warped dimensions, reflections multiplying her fear. "Help!" she screamed, voice cracking. The laughter pulsed, rising higher, a symphony of horror as it melded with her mounting terror. Before she could think, a sudden crash shattered the air, a mirror fractured, its shards raining down around her, gleaming like jagged teeth. Just beyond the shards, she caught a glimpse of Tommy's face, full of fear, a cry lost in the chaos. Could she reach him? Desperation fueled her as she raised her hands, ready to break the last barrier. But would it shatter the curse, or bind her forever? With a crashing heartbeat, she lunged forward. Would Clara's leap into the unknown free her son, or plunge them both deeper into the curse of the funhouse? What price would she pay for their reunion? As hope and dread collided, the Carnival's laughter became a thunderous crescendo, echoing the impending doom. Shards of glass exploded in a cascade of reflections, each fragment slicing through the air like the whispered fears of 1,000 trapped souls. Clara wasn't just leaping, she was plunging into the abyss of uncertainty. The moment her hands broke through the final barrier, a wave of icy panic surged around her, pulling her into the cold darkness behind the mirror. Her body fell through a void, a choking silence engulfing her as she felt herself being drawn somewhere beneath, a dark whirlpool pulling her deeper. For brief moments, time ceased. The chaotic world faded into an eerie stillness, but echoes of laughter reverberated with a disturbing joy around her. Then, a sharp gasp breath hitched in her throat as she landed, hard, on a surface that felt both familiar and bizarrely wrong. She blinked, the lights slow to adjust. Clara was in a twisted reflection of the funhouse. The walls rippled like water, shifting patterns dancing in front of her. There was no carousel, no lights, just time-worn surfaces heavy with shadow, and the laughter it twisted and coiled around her, clawing at the edges of her mind. "Tommy!" she cried, her voice growing hoarse in this bleak expanse. She was met only with a soft, mocking echo of her own scream, bouncing off the warped walls like it was taunting her. What had she done? Entrapped in some dark whimsy of Mr. Grayson himself, surrendering to the same fate as countless others, desperation surged anew. She struggled to her feet, scanning the dim surroundings. The shadows writhed like living things, and she could see shapes darting at the periphery, glimmers of movement just beyond her gaze. Could it be Tommy? The thought sent a jolt through her, both invigorating and chilling, but there was something off. She could sense it. Each step deeper into this mirrored nightmare threatened to fracture her resolve. The laughter, vibrant and joyful, now whispered secrets behind her back. It danced in the echoes, building into a crescendo of manic delight. With a chill creeping beneath her skin, Clara pressed on, the darkness tugging at her clothes, urging her to remain still, to join in the revelry of those lost. "No," she gasped, shaking her head furiously. "I will find my son." Suddenly, in the distance, a familiar figure appeared. His bright shirt flashed as he moved, and Clara's heart soared. "Tommy!" She reached out, but the closer she got, the faster he slipped away, teasing her to follow. "Mom!" he called, but his voice was distorted here, stretched thin like a canvas ready to tear. Each call dripped with an innocence that grated against her nerves, pulling at her heart. The reflections around her twisted. One reflected a Tommy with dark, hollow eyes, while in another, he grinned maliciously, inviting her into a game she didn't want to play. "No, it's not you!" she shouted, tears brimming as the laughter grew louder. "Stay with me, Tommy!" With ferocity, she surged forward, breaking through the shifting shadows. Each step felt like wading through syrup, a weight pulling her deeper into despair. But she couldn't give in. Not now. The playful echoes morphed into shrieks, gleeful laughter turned sinister. As she tore through the warped maze, Clara knew something was wrong. Shapes began to envelope her, each one morphing into a child. Their gazes hollowed and unblinking as they circled her, their fates intertwined with the curse that enveloped this place. Grayson's hold on them was powerful. Then Clara felt it, a sharp pull on her heart, as if a string tethered her to someone unseen, dragging her toward the center of this bleak theater of horror. Could this be Tommy? Or was the very essence of the funhouse wrapping its fingers around her sentimentality, squeezing until she broke completely? The walls started to close in, distorting strangely, and for one frantic moment, she saw a glimmer of hope ahead, a glint of color that seemed ever so slightly out of reach. With renewed ferocity, Clara lunged forward, desperate and terrified. This moment would decide everything, but as she rushed toward the light, the laughter surged to a deafening roar, enveloping her senses until everything went dark once again. The funhouse was alive. And it would not let either of them go easily. What secrets would it unveil next? Secrets that could either shatter them or bind them forever. The darkness hugged Clara tightly, a suffocating void that swallowed her cries before they could escape. She felt a pit deep within her, an emptiness that twisted like a knife through her heart. Her mind raced, clawing for a blend of hope and logic, but the very air around her seemed to conspire against her, thick with malevolence, she forced herself to breathe in, the stale air tasting of despair. Every instinct screamed for her to turn back, but the thought of Tommy kept her moving forward. After what felt like an eternity, the sound of children's laughter cut through the shadows again, but this time it was layered with something cruel, like a biting wind through a deserted street. "Tommy!" Clara screamed once more, her voice ragged, reverberating in the oppressive silence. And then she heard it, a soft thud, like a small body lunging against the warped floorboards. Fear and anticipation thrummed through her veins. Was it him? She dashed toward the noise, frantic, ignoring the sinister shapes shifting at the corners of her vision. As she rounded a corner, Clara stumbled into a hall lined with mirrors, thousands of them reflecting fragments of her frantic self, each distorted and imperfect. She caught glimpses of children's faces flickering behind the glass, Tommy's smile here, a dark shadow there. They beckoned with ghostly fingers that gripped her very soul. She clenched her fists, fighting the urge to mirror their hollow grins. "Stop!" she shouted, her feet moving faster, pounding against the warped floor. The echoes mocked her, ricocheting in a chaotic symphony of laughter and despair. Every reflection twisted her deeper into a memory she preferred to forget, a part of her childhood she wished to bury, her own youthful days spent in the laughter of a carnival, now corrupted by this dark mirage. Suddenly, she spotted it, a singular figure that stood gloriously apart from the chaos, an image that seemed to shine even in the gloom. A boy with bright eyes, desperately waving. "Mom!" Clara's heart sank and soared. She lunged forward as movement blurred the edges of her vision. But as soon as she reached for him, he vanished like smoke, replaced by an echoing howl of laughter that threatened to engulf her. The mocking laughter had transformed into chilling wails, an outcry of the tormented souls forever trapped in this mirrored purgatory. She pressed onward, each step dragging her through waves of dread. The oppressive figures danced and swirled around her, shadows darkening the light that barely existed. In the mania, she heard something different, a low hum that resonated from deep in the walls. Its rhythm thrummed through her chest, an unholy chant that cradled her vulnerability. It felt like a heartbeat, steady, insistent, calling her closer, drawing her nearer to something primal. She stumbled into yet another chamber, the walls pulsating. In the center lay a swirling mass of fog, whispers caught in the chaos, and she could almost decipher the words. "We are waiting." A chilling sensation crawled down her spine. "Who?" she asked, her voice now barely a whisper. The shadows inched closer, and the laughter again morphed into cries of anguish. She backed away from the mist, but it swallowed her breath, tightening around her throat like a noose. And then she realized the truth, those cries were all too familiar. They were the voices of the lost kids, their pleadings echoing her desperation, their fate a reflection of what awaited her. Suddenly, the pulse of the fog shifted violently as small, cold hands grasped at her ankles, pulling her down. Clara kicked and flailed, but they held tight, drawing her ever closer to the darkened heart of the funhouse. "No!" she screamed, her heart racing. She was not going to become just another lost child. As the laughing faces rose around her, Clara felt the dark energy of the place push against her. What if she remained trapped here forever? What if she never found Tommy? Just as panic threatened to spiral, a light flickered in the distance, a spark of hope igniting amidst the consuming shadows. If she could just reach it, if she could just break free. But just then, a whisper brushed against her ear, chilling her to the bone. "Join us." The air shimmered, and the ground beneath her feet began to quake. Could she truly escape? Would she uncover the funhouse's secrets, or were they bound to her forever? She gritted her teeth, knowing she had to act fast. With a sudden burst of courage, Clara made a desperate rush toward the light, her heart pounding louder than the laughter around her. But the deeper she delved, the more twisted and malevolent the reality became. Would she find Tommy on the other side, or was something far worse waiting for her in the shadows of that luminous haze? Time was running out, and Clara had to decide. Would she face the truth or be lost to the twisted funhouse's echoing laughter forever? Clara barreled toward the light, her heart drumming a frantic beat, an urgent reminder of her humanity against the shadows clawing at her. Each step felt heavier, as if the very ground sought to anchor her down, to join the lost souls who whispered and wailed in the ever-looming darkness. As her foot touched the edge of the luminescence, the air shifted, sending a shockwave through her body. She gasped as the light enveloped her, spilling bright warmth over her like a blanket. But that comfort was deceptive, it sliced through the thick tendrils of shadow with an unnatural sharpness. Suddenly, she was in a new space, a stark contrast to the haunting halls she had just fled. The glittering light revealed a room filled with sparkling carnival paraphernalia. Balloons floated high above, their bright colors mockingly cheerful. A carousel spun lazily, its wooden horses frozen in time, eerily still like lifeless statues. The dissonance of joy in this otherwise sinister place sent another chill up her spine. This was a front, a facade hiding something dark beneath. "Tommy!" she cried, her voice echoing in the wide chamber, a haunting counterpoint to the cheer that surrounded her. Her heart raced, urgency slicing through like a knife. Yet, no sound answered her, only the lingering echoes of her despair floating in the air. She realized she was not alone. Figures flickered in her peripheral vision, always just out of reach. They wore bright, happy costumes, but the smiles on their painted faces couldn't mask the dread she felt. Those figures weren't smiling, they were grinning, and their eyes dark, empty voids watched her every move. "Come play with us." One figure twisted, its voice distorted like a warped record. Clara felt her stomach twist in response, something primal urged her to flee. They were not welcoming, they were hunters, luring her deeper into their trap. Just then, Clara's foot caught on something soft yet restrictive. She looked down to see a mass of brightly colored ribbons and plastic loose ends of a forgotten game that seemed to come alive, wrapping around her ankles like serpents. Panic flashed through her, and she wrenched her legs free, sprinting further into the chamber, each beat of her heart echoing the urgency of escape, crimson panic coloring her thoughts. "Mom!" rang out again, and she almost stopped in her tracks. It was Tommy's voice, but layered with urgency and fear. "Help! Tommy!" Clara shouted, driven by raw instinct. She pushed deeper into the room, breaking through a curtain of shiny streamers that clanged against one another, a dizzying cascade that swirled around her, momentarily disorienting her. In her rush, she stumbled onto a trapdoor, a warped ancient hatch that throbbed with unnatural energy, pulsing in rhythm with the heartbeat of the darkness. Glancing back, the figures were closer, their laughter rising like a malevolent storm. They danced forward with an otherworldly grace, and Clara felt the air condense. She could almost taste the terror. Fumbling with the latch, she threw it open. A breath of cold air escaped like a howling wind, and she hesitated for a heartbeat. What lay beneath? Forcing herself forward, she leaped into the darkness, plummeting into a gaping abyss that swallowed her whole. As she fell, 1,000 questions raced through her mind. Would she find Tommy? What horrors awaited her below? The laughter of the figures above echoed louder, almost triumphantly, as she plummeted deeper and deeper until she landed with a thud on hard ground that felt curiously warm beneath her. Dazed, Clara's eyes adjusted. Gritting her teeth, she recognized the landscape around her, an endless field of twisted, gnarled trees. The wind carried the smell of burnt sugar and stale popcorn, tainting the sweet memories of childhood joy. She was not yet free. The Funhouse's secrets were unwinding, and the darkness had its grip tight on her. The only sound was the rustling of the leaves, and then came a low, creeping whisper from the trees. "We've been waiting for you." Her skin prickled with dread as she turned. Slowly, the shadows pooling around her feet. Clara was far from safe, she had entered another realm of horrors. Would she confront the truth of the Funhouse, unravel the mystery surrounding Tommy, or become yet another lost soul destined to wander this new nightmare? The air thickened, and she felt many eyes watching her. The game was only beginning. The trees towered like grotesque sentinels, their branches twisted and reaching, looming over her. Clara took a step back, her breath quickening, her pulse pounding in her ears. The whisper echoed again, slithering through the air. "We've been waiting for you." She shuddered, scanning her surroundings for any sign of Tommy, but there was nothing but silence and shadows. Something rustled nearby, a sudden movement that clawed at her attention. Clara squinted into the gloom, her heart racing. Was it another one of those grinning figures? Panic rose in her throat like bile. "Tommy!" she called, her voice trembling. The wind howled in response, mocking her fear. The trees shifted, their gnarled roots curling like twisted fingers, as if beckoning her closer. She fought an urge to follow, something primal within her screamed to escape. Glancing around, she spotted a narrow path lined with faded clown posters, their vibrant colors dulled and smeared. They hung limply on the bark, grotesque faces leering down at her, eyes that once sparkled now just blank voids. Clara steeled herself. She had to move. She took a breath and stepped onto the path, feeling the crunch of leaves underfoot. Each step felt like an intrusion, yet the path pulled her deeper into the woods, toward the unknown. "Help!" The voice cut through the air again, desperate, familiar. "Tommy." She pushed on, every ounce of fear fueling her resolve. She needed to find him. A flash of color darted between the trees. Clara stopped, squinting into the darkness. "Tommy." Her voice trembled, and anticipation made her heart hammer. In the distance, a flicker of light danced, a small glimmer, swaying like a lantern. As she neared, the light flickered maddeningly, revealing a clearing where a small circus tent stood, filthy and tattered. Clara's heart sank. It was an eerie echo of the funhouse she had just fled. The entrance loomed, an inviting void in the chaotic surroundings. A gut instinct told her to run, but the thought of Tommy spurred her forward. "Please be in there," she whispered, and with a resolute breath, she stepped inside the tent. Inside, it was chaos. Broken mirrors hung haphazardly, reflecting warped images of her own panicked face. The air was thick with the scent of burnt popcorn and decay. Clara took a cautious step, but the ground beneath her began to pulse, thrumming like a heartbeat. "Clara!" Tommy's voice rang out again, closer now. She rushed deeper into the tent, her resolve hardening. More laughter echoed, but it sounded wrong, jarring and sinister. She pressed forward, driven by instinct, the sound of her own breathing drowning out the world around her. Suddenly, a form blocked her path, one of the twisted figures, its body contorted unnaturally. Its painted grin stretched wide, revealing teeth sharp enough to rip through flesh, eyes full of darkness, and it blocked the way to Tommy. The shadows twisted around it, writhing like living things, hungry for her. "Come play with us," it screeched, stepping closer, its voice a chilling cacophony. Clara's heart raced as adrenaline pooled in her veins. "Get away from him!" she yelled, shoving past the figure, pushing through the chaos that swirled like a storm. The laughter echoed around her, a malicious symphony that made her skin crawl. She sprinted toward a beam of light filtering through the cracks in the tent. There, in the flickering shadows, stood the ghostly outline of a child, the familiar silhouette of her brother, reaching out, desperate. "Clara!" Tommy's eyes shone bright with hope and fear. "Help me!" Just as Clara lunged toward him, the ground trembled violently beneath her. In an instant, the world around her shifted, twisting and contorting. The tent groaned and began to collapse, shadows closing in to suffocate the light. Clara felt the terror slip around her like an icy embrace. "Clara!" His voice faded, trails of darkness holding him fast. "Help me!" Panic surged. She tore toward him, but the shadows snagged at her ankles, dragging her back as the tent engulfed them in chaos. With one last desperate push, she grasped for Tommy, but an overwhelming force pulled her away. "No!" she screamed, the darkness swallowing her whole. The laughter roared, and the whispers intensified. "We've been waiting for you." But where was she? She didn't know how much longer she could fight, what dark fate awaited them. In that moment, the world went black, and Clara felt herself falling once more. The question pulsed like a heartbeat in the silence. What awaited her at the bottom of the abyss? Would she find Tommy or be lost forever in a nightmare of twisted games? Clara's fall felt endless, swallowed by a void where time and sound blurred. Her skin tingled, and an icy grip clamped around her throat, as if the darkness itself was inhaling her essence. Crashing against cold ground, she gasped for breath, lungs burning, but the air was stale and thick, stinging her eyes. She blinked into the dimness, confusion swirling. The tent had really collapsed. A scratchy laughter, different from before, pierced the gloom, a sound like nails scraping against glass. Panic clawed at her gut. "Tommy!" she called out, echoing through an eerie silence. The unsettling quiet hung like a thick fog, suffocating. As her eyes adjusted, shapes began to emerge from the darkness, silhouettes weaving in and out like shadows in a nightmare. Clara felt her heartbeat quicken, the rhythmic thumping betraying her mounting dread. A flicker of light shimmered close by, drawing her like a moth. She crawled toward it, teeth clenched against the tightness creeping through her chest. Her fingers brushed over jagged ground, stray pieces of glass cutting into her palms. The light turned out to be a projector, long abandoned, its beam dancing erratically against the wall. Images flickered, scenes from a macabre circus played out, clowns with maniacal grins, contorted performers twisting into unimaginable shapes, and children, oh the children lost within the clutch of shadowy figures. The sight settled coldly in her gut, tightening her throat. This isn't right, she murmured to herself, dread pooling heavily. "Clara!" Tommy's voice, strained and distant, broke her trance. "Help me!" She moved, urgency overriding the fear. "I'm coming!" she shouted, scrambling through the maze of memories displayed around her. Each image tugged at her sanity, but she focused on the sound of Tommy's voice, as if it were a lifeline thrown into an endless sea. Through the dim light, she finally spotted a doorway, a gaping opening leading into darkness. With a steely breath, she plunged into it, stepping over what felt like soft earth and cold bodies lying out of sight. She stifled a gag, the smell of decay clawing at her nostrils, leaving no room for hesitation. "Tommy!" she yelled again, desperation lacing her voice. The shadows closed behind her, pooling ominously, as if alive, watching her every move. Her heart raced, an instinct whispered for her to stop, to flee. And yet, she pressed on. As she turned a corner, dread knotted in her stomach. There stood another figure, not twisted like the others, but reflecting her own terror. A pale clown with a painted face, its eyes hollowed and black. It grinned wide, exposing those jagged teeth. "Don't you want to play?" it crooned, its voice slick like oil. It mimicked her innocence, beckoning with twitching fingers. She swallowed hard. "Get away from me!" Laughter erupted around her, the echoes mocking, a cacophony suffocating her resolve. In that moment, Clara understood they wanted her fear. They thrived on it. Out of the corner of her eye, a flicker of movement caught her attention. Tommy! He was being dragged away, a shadow grabbing and pulling him, his face twisted in fear, reaching for her with outstretched arms. "No! Tommy!" With a primal yell, she lunged forward, but the clown's fingers snatched at her wrist, tightening like a vice. Clara fought against it, every ounce of adrenaline surging within her. Images of the sinister circus flashed in her mind, fear, despair, and choices made. Did she dare let fear win? With a surge of strength, Clara broke free, sprinting towards Tommy. The shadows darted around her, a sinister wind whooshing, but she wouldn't stop. She couldn't lose him again. As she reached for her brother, the world cracked, a shadowy chasm erupted before them, darkness unfurling like a ravenous beast, greedily consuming everything in its path. Wind howled. "Clara!" Tommy screamed, but the abyss yawned wide, and Clara felt herself teetering on the edge. In that moment of peril, her heart sank, realization washing over her. The darkness wasn't just hungry for them, it was hungry for their hope. Hold on! She grasped desperately for Tommy's hand, but shadows coiled around his wrist, pulling him down, dragging him into the pitch. Tommy! The world blurred, the air turned thick with dread. Could she save him? Was hope even possible in this hell? And then it struck her, a glimmer in the void. What if she was meant to embrace the darkness? What if she had to challenge it, face it head on? Tommy. Trust me. The question hung in the air as she took a step forward, ready to leap into the unknown. But before she could act, a ripple of laughter spread through the shadow, and Clara felt herself falling once again without knowing if she would fall into darkness or find the strength to fight. What awaited her on this next descent? Would she find her brother or become yet another whisper in the darkness? Clara felt weightless, suspended in darkness, until a sudden impact jolted her into sharp reality. It was as if she had crashed into another layer of the nightmare. She lay sprawled on the ground, breathing heavily, the stale air clawing at her throat. As she pushed herself up, she groaned, her limbs heavy with an unseen dread that pressed down on her like a weight. Tommy. She whispered, voice shaky, swallowed by the oppressive silence. A shiver ran down her spine as she scanned her surroundings. The ground beneath her felt like soft sand, yet flickers of light caught her attention, fragments flickering in rhythmic pulses. She blinked, struggling to make sense of the place she landed in. The light danced like will-o'-the-wisps, beckoning and taunting footprints. She noticed them, odd prints leading away from her. They weren't human. They were too large, each step imposing, a mixture of claw and web, dragging along the surface. Clara's blood ran cold. Something had passed through here, and she could almost feel its gaze, lurking just beyond her ripple of sight. That a dissonant laugh echoed through the air, and she whipped around, heart racing. The sound was all too familiar, mingling with the bits of memory that flashed like quick cuts in her mind. Children, right before the darkness, their laughter twisted and warped. Desperation surged, and she forced herself forward, following the footprints, pulse pounding in her ears. Tommy. Each call felt like a fragile thread, fraying against the silence. She stepped further into the unknown, wary of the shadows that lurked, feeling them wrap around her like a shroud. The light grew brighter, revealing a tattered carousel. The horses seemed frozen mid-gallop, their glassy eyes staring blankly ahead. Clara approached slowly, each step sending a chill racing through her. Was this beauty or terror? The music emerged softly from somewhere inside, a warped melody that sent an icy finger down her spine. Tommy. Are you here? She knelt beside the carousel, pressing her hands against the cold wood, the varnish flaking away like old skin. It felt alive. She could feel its heart beat like a whisper, pulsing beneath her fingertips. Suddenly, a shriek cut through her thoughts, a voice chillingly familiar. Clara bolted upright, rushing towards the sound, adrenaline surging. The carousel lights flickered higher, and shadows flitted past her. Panic clawed at her chest. Help. Clara. It's too dark. Tommy's voice pierced her soul as if drowning in a tempest. They're coming. She tore down a narrow path, led by her brother's cries, heart punching against her ribs. Her breaths came quick, shallow, each inhale heavy with the scent of must and decay. The ground was now uneven, roots creeping like fingers, grappling at her ankles. Tommy. She called out, desperation laced with fear, but the laughter, oh God, that laughter. It filled her ears, wrapping around her head, echoing from every shadow, suffocating her resolve. Don't run, Clara. A voice rang clear like a gavel hammering down. It was the clown from earlier, materializing from the shadows, its face twisted, a wretched semblance of glee. The fun is just beginning. She glanced over her shoulder. More figures were emerging from the void, shapes twisting and writhing, a grotesque parade of her worst nightmares. The darkness underneath the carousel began to swirl and bubble, as though reality itself was a fragile bubble about to burst. No. Get away from me. Clara sprang forward, racing down the corridor of shadows. The figures reached out, claws grazing her skin, pricking it with splinters of pure dread. She could feel their laughter tugging at her spirit, dragging her back into despair. She turned a corner and saw him. Tommy hung from the edge of a steep drop, shadowy figures clawing and pulling him down toward the abyss. Clara, please. Help me. His voice cracked, a sound like glass breaking. Tommy. In that instant, she understood the choice laid before her, the bottomless dread awaiting them both. She could plunge into the void with him or fight against the tidal wave of shadows threatening to consume them. With resolve, Clara stepped closer, gathering every ounce of strength. I will not let them take you. But as she reached for him, the ground shook. The dark beings swirled, laughter escalating, and Clara felt her feet slipping away, the abyss looming closer, hungry and insatiable. Submit to us. They chorused, voices merging into a chaotic chant. Colossal fear gripped her heart. What if they were right? What if the only way to succeed was to surrender? Panic surged as she teetered between the darkness and her brother, the pull threatening to swallow them whole. With her fear racing, she clutched the edge of the chasm, heart pounding wildly. Would she accept the darkness and perhaps find redemption, or perish alongside her brother in the clutches of despair? As shadows clawed at her back, Clara felt the seed of defiance blossom within her. It was time to challenge them head-on. But could she really defeat the shadows that danced with her deepest fears? Would she prevail against the terror closing in? The echoes of laughter filled the air, drowning her thoughts, a swirling maelstrom of horror. What awaited her may not just threaten her life but could set loose a darkness deeper than her worst nightmare. And then, with a final tug, the shadows yanked her towards the void, an endless darkness that threatened to steal everything, including her very soul. Clara felt the darkness envelop her, pulling her in two directions at once. The laughter rang louder, a cacophony that was both distant and absurdly close. It was a fever pitch of hoots and screeches, an orchestra of madness. She could hardly breathe. Tommy. Her voice was raw, a haunting echo swallowed by the darkness. As she fought against the pull of the abyss, the shadows twisted around her like smoke, each tendril reaching out, seeking her warmth, her essence. Desperation surged. She couldn't lose him. Not again. With a fierce cry, she dug her fingers into the crumbling ground, clawing her way back towards her brother. His terrified face, pale and pleading, seemed lit by a dying glow, suspended just out of reach. The shadows hissed at her resolve, an angry gust that sent chills racing down her spine. Clara. Please. Don't let them take me. His voice cracked, slippery with fear. Suddenly, the shadows shifted, swirling around her with a violent force. Clara felt a jolt shoot through her body as they whirled her toward the edge. Panic clawed at her, and she screamed, a raw, primal sound that echoed into the void. But amidst the chaos, she sensed something, a flicker of memory, something powerful within her that ignited hope. Fight! She hissed to herself, clutching the ground tighter. She remembered moments before the darkness, the laughter of childhood, the warmth of sun on her skin. Those memories were her anchors. The moment stretched like a taut rubber band, and with a surge of adrenaline, Clara focused her energy on the chasm that threatened to swallow her brother, and in that moment, she remembered a light, the light of unyielding love. Tommy. Hold on. She reached out with all her might, extending her arm toward him. His eyes widened, shimmering with hope amidst the horror. Clara. I'm slipping. She gritted her teeth and narrowed her focus, pulling forth that flicker of warmth. Between the shadows and the abyss, she felt it, a force like a candle flickering against the storm. Together. We can fight them. And then, she felt it, a surge of power beneath her, a pulse that answered back, a raw energy ignited by their bond, thrumming through the darkness. The shadows shrieked as the light expanded, forcing them back. Clara's heart raced as she felt the ground stabilize. Clara. Tommy yelled, and with fierce determination, Clara yanked her brother toward her, feeling his hand clasp hers like a lifeline. But their victory was short-lived. The carousel began to creak and groan, the joyous melody warping into a taunting symphony of despair. The swirling darkness around them thickened, responding in wrath, a storm of chilling fury. The figures from the carousel stepped forth, ghastly faces twisting in grotesque delight. You think you can escape? You belong to us. Their voices melded into a singular, chilling chant that coursed through Clara and Tommy, buzz-sawing through her resolve. "No. You will not take him." Clara screamed, adrenaline igniting a fierce flame in her heart. "We are stronger than you." With every ounce of willpower, she willed the light within her to expand. It surged forward, a blinding beacon that shattered the shadows like glass. But the darkness retaliated, roaring back in wild, thrashing tendrils. Clara felt her strength drain, exhaustion clawing at her body. "Clara!" Tommy's voice trembled, and she felt his grip falter, panic flooding their connection. The shadows, sensing vulnerability, coiled around them with sadistic intent. Clara could almost taste the fear, a bitter tang on her tongue. In a heartbeat, her heart sank as she sensed them close in, but just then, a gust of wind surged through, shaking the carousel fiercely, its music a dissonant wail. "Tommy, we can't back down. We need to find a way to break this cycle." The shadows writhed, furious at their resilience, and Clara's eyes darted to the carousel, realizing the key rested within. She followed the grotesque forms back to the crumbling wooden structure that was once a place of innocent laughter. The very heart of their torment. "Together, we can end this," Clara urged, determination cutting through the darkness. "We have to believe." But as the shadows encroached, inching closer, she wondered would their unity be enough against an army of nightmares? Or was the darkness too deep, too hungry? Would they claim victory, or would they remain swallowed forever in the abyss of their worst fears? In the suffocating silence that followed, the shadows seemed to ponder their fate, twisting in anticipation. Clara's heart raced, caught between hope and despair, as an unsettling question loomed in her mind: what would happen if they lost everything including each other? Clara's heart raced as the shadows danced around them, their malicious whispers echoing with sinister glee. She clung tightly to Tommy's hand, feeling the warmth of his small fingers imbue her with determination. "We can't let them take us," she shouted, her voice quivering but resolute, pushing back against the tide of despair. The carousel's music swelled, a warped tune that filled the air with urgency and dread. "Together, Tommy. We can do this." Gathering what strength she had left, Clara focused all her energy on the connection they shared. The light within her surged, illuminating the darkness that wished to consume them. The shadows writhed in fury, their laughter turning into agonized shrieks as Clara directed her newfound power toward the carousel. "This ends now." She roared the words, and the visibility of her will blasted through the swarming darkness like the sun emerging from storm clouds. The carousel spun wildly, its painted horses kicking up fragments of light and shadow, a frenzy of color battling against the encroaching darkness. Clara felt the vibrations ripple through her, pulsing as her love for Tommy ignited an explosion of hope. The shadows recoiled, hissing as they were pulled back, essence thinning in the face of her unwavering spirit. "Clara, I can feel it," Tommy shouted, his face lit with awe as the carousel began to break apart, splintering wood and twisted metal casting glimmers against the clawing dark. "We're winning. Don't lose hope," Clara shouted back, anchoring her gaze on the remnants of the carousel. It began to shimmer, the light blending into an ethereal spectacle, reflecting their determination. The darkness was losing its grip, its form splintering like broken glass. And just like that, she caught sight of familiar faces flickering through the shadows, lost children, now shimmering specters of hope. Their eyes were filled with yearning, and Clara recognized the pain they carried, trapped in this twisted funhouse with no escape. "Join us," they pleaded, their words echoing through the air. Each voice merged into a chorus, weaving into the fabric of their resistance. Clara felt her heart tighten, but this time, it was not fear. It was a call to action. "We will save every one of you," Clara shouted, feeling a wave of determination crash over her, washing fears away. "Together, we will break free." With that, Clara and Tommy stood side by side, their bonds like iron chains against the shadows. The carousel collapsed into beams of radiant light, forcing the darkness back until it couldn't resist any longer. In one final act, Clara shouted, "You will not take us." As she flung her hand forward, the light bursting forth, enveloping everything. The shadows screamed, a cacophony of rage and anguish. Clara could see them fraying, fear and darkness unraveling away from her heart and her brother's grip, their essence dispelled by the sheer force of their unity. The figures of lost children joined too, forming a protective shield around Clara and Tommy, helping them hold back the tide that in an instant. There was silence. Clara opened her eyes, breathless. Gone were the twisted figures, the encroaching darkness. Instead, she found herself standing amidst the remnants of the funhouse, outside the entrance that had once felt so foreboding. The vibrant carnival lights twinkled merrily overhead as if celebrating their victory over despair. Tommy. Clara pulled him tightly in a hug, relief flooding through her. He felt solid and warm, smiling brightly, untainted by the horrors they had just endured. It was real. They were free. I was so scared, he whispered, looking up at her with trust in his eyes. Me too, she replied, brushing tears away. Tears of relief, freedom, and love. As they stepped away from the shadows of their past, Mr. Grayson appeared at the entrance, a mere shadow of his former self. Without the malevolent force, Clara felt no fear, just pity. The carnival would carry on without its curse, the tales of lost children transforming into stories of hope, a reminder that light can always triumph over darkness. They watched as the laughter from the attendees faded into the distance, and Tommy tugged on his mother's hand. Can we go have cotton candy now? Clara chuckled, buttressing the joy that had returned to her heart. Yes, let us go. Hand in hand, they walked away, leaving behind the remnants of their nightmares. The carnival glowed brighter than ever, and the air buzzed with excitement. The road to healing would take time, but they would always walk it together. As they disappeared into the healing embrace of the carnival lights, a new story began, a story not of curses, but of resilience, love, and the unwavering bond between a mother and her son. But before we wrap up, here is something crucial you can do. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this heart-pounding conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this uplifting ending. Your support is essential, so join our community and stay tuned for more thrilling tales.